How do you approach this if you're Astrea and you see you're in the group with Serral? Do you just look at that game and you're like, probably won't win that one? Or do you take it serious and you decide to, well, come up with some creative builds?
I feel like you go into it and you have a big smile on your face because you're like, yes, no one expects me to win.
Yeah.
Everything to gain, nothing to lose, and I think that's cool. I definitely feel like Astrea always has special tactics in this matchup, and he's had some really good ones. I always think of, like, I guess late 2022 Home Story Cup Finals versus Reynor. He had some fantastic PVZs there. Reynor was just a bit too quick for him and a bit too kind of on point at shutting down some of what he was trying to do. But I think already starting off by blocking the natural is a good start for Astrea. And we'll see exactly what vein of ZVP he's willing to play. The scary thing, though, as I said, is Serral. He went from being so timing attack oriented in the last few years to, yeah, he can still hit timing attacks, but his late game is just back in form. He's been grinding it out, and few players are scarier with Broodlords than he is.
You're absolutely right. His late game has looked phenomenal. There's not really a whole lot of weaknesses in his play whatsoever. So I think Astrea indeed is going into this match with, yeah, maybe expectations to just play some good games and bring maybe some of the more creative builds that he's been practicing lately. If you know that it's going to be a tough road ahead, this may just be the matchup where, yeah, you can bring the strategies that maybe not always work that greatly. I mean, we already have a pylon as part of the wall off. That's already a little bit funky, but we're looking for something a little crazier than that.
The hero meta is where it's at, man. I'm down. It's so funny because, like, I make so much fun of players when they have weird little inefficiencies in their builds, but I'm actually down on the pylon because I've seen people building such good wall-offs behind it at this point, and it just hasn't been getting punished. And I'm like, you know what? The 2 racks on the low ground that Terrans do Verso, that should also get punished. It works more often than not, right? It does get punished occasionally. It is a little dangerous.
So you're not thinking it's going to be a bailing bust?
Definitely not. There is no way you could bait Serral into Baneling Bust. I mean, Serral...
It used to be the case, right? Whenever there was a pylon as part of the natural wall-off, Zergs would just insta-drop a Baneling Nest.
Half of Rotterdam's ladder win rate, mate, is weird janky pylon walls, and people couldn't resist. They'd always get in there. I do love the Robo opening. Unfortunately, letting a Zergling in is a huge mistake for Astrea. You don't want to be giving away that free scouting this early. And that really limits your options. I believe it's going to be a Prism. Double Adept pressure is the goal. Astrea does get rid of 1 drone and a Spore Trick. It's not a bad start for a single Adept, but losing the Adept, of course, does slow him down.
Yeah, the Robo Opener is not the most common one in this matchup. 9 times out of 10, it's a Stargate. We see Twilight Council builds quite a bit as well, but this is indeed going to be a very quick Warp Prism. This is especially good if you are going up against somebody who doesn't expect it, right? But against this, Serral can, for example, already start skipping things like Spore Crawlers, right? Little things like that. That Zergling Scout is just very helpful for the Zerg player because it does save on the drones. 1 Stalker only actually to hold that wall since the Adept ended up going down, but Probe's coming to the rescue.
Yeah, I like that. The Probes can always phase through the Stalker to make sure it doesn't die. And this is good because you want to keep Serral in the dark. Technically, you could be doing like a 5 or 6 gate all-in off this. He's, of course, not doing that, but the Rotoran has to go down for safety just in case. Going to 4 gases behind this, and the Adepts will start pushing forward.
You see the gases?
With the Warp Prism, he will see both of them,
That's a nice tell, of course, that, ooh, something fishy is going on. And what exactly is happening? It's double Stargate in the main, and there's already a 2nd Overlord flying on over. How does he do this?
Disgusting! Sarah, how do you always see everything? How are your Overlords always in the right position, Serral?
Just predict the future.
Just please, if any other Zerg player could be this consistent with their scouting, I swear, it would be insane. But somehow Serral is the one guy who's always in the right place at the right time. His knowledge of the matchup is insane.
So we're going to continue the mind game left, right, and center. The build order choices are falling flat on its face. Astrea, rather than doubling down to what was probably Phoenixes, I guess, he decides to go into a Twilight Council and a Forge now.
Well, I mean, Astrea has to completely change his game plan here at this point. He basically is playing like Haas. And he has to. You can't be doing double Stargate when it's scouted that early. It's a surprise play. And but so far, Robo scouted, double Stargate scouted. We see this so often in this matchup. Serral's going Burrow and a Lair. The Burrow is definitely a very odd choice against a Robo opening. Does seem like maybe that's a misclick, but we'll find out soon enough. And the rare first-person viewpoint of the greatest of all time. I think, you think he caught that. Well done. He did cancel that.
Yeah, I think he just clicked on it very rapidly there. This is indeed the first-person view of Serral. He is, at this point, assuming it's probably double Stargate, or at the very least something that is looking like double star. He may already be predicting as well that this is going to be a cancel from the Protoss player.
And this counters both. This is so genius, right? Because Corruptors can beat Phoenix, and Mutas are just amazing versus a player who doesn't have a Stargate. So this is such a clever play from Serral, and I think from the moment he saw the Robo, he already had Spire.
Double checking right now. He sees that indeed the Stargates did get cancelled. Perfect play so far, honestly, by Serral, right? He decides to cancel. Man, he's so good in this matchup. It's almost disgusting.
It's not fair. It's actually not fair. He's ridiculous, man. Astrea's not finding any openings just yet. The Adepts cancelling their shade at the last second. The fourth base starts at 6:15, which is not the earliest fourth, but considering he has his Spire almost finished,
yeah,
still quite good.
We've seen Spires be very successful. Dark has had a lot of success making just a whole load of Mutas. Sometimes it's just about 6 to 8 Mutas, maybe 10. Sometimes it's mass Mutalisk, and I think both are excellent choices in this particular game. Serral did decide to go for the Roach speed upgrade. Spire gets scouted, so that's actually really quite nice here for Astrea. And by the way, let's not pretend that Serral is incredibly far ahead in this game, supply-wise and economy-wise. He's obviously in a fantastic position. Protoss hasn't really done any damage in the early game, but Astrea has done a good job building up his economy. He scouted the Spire there, so these 6 Mutas are not really gonna catch him off guard. I don't hate this position here for Astrea.
This is it. You're often so focused on how do I catch Serral off guard? What do I surprise him with? What's the kill move? Sometimes he scouts it a bit too easily, and that seems to be the case in this game. Just 6 or 7 Mutalisks flying across the map on the south. Immortal Archon trying to force them home to defend. But Serral says, you know what? Okay. Oh, he actually does pull the Mutas home for a moment to group them up. I think he's got plenty of Roach Ravager, though. It's a hard call for Astrea in this scenario. The Mutas actually fighting an Archon. Wow, Serral.
That is like the one unit that they're usually not supposed to fight, but if he would have gotten it, that would have been a mental boost, if anything. I think since he got scouted, he realized, okay, the odds of me doing a lot of damage in the mineral line are basically 0. He's gonna give up on this base, it seems. I know Queens do pop up, couple transfuses will save the hatchery for now. Good force fields, but they're gonna get popped.
Indeed, Mutalisks rotate into the natural expand. More probes are falling. And you'll notice Serral is focusing on preserving the Mutalisks. He's not overcommitting. His first Mutalisk there, I believe, does die.
Oh, no. He actually, okay. Walked into the wall there. Luckily, the Prism was nearby to save some of those very expensive Protoss units. Immortals and Archons and Sentries, those are not to be lost at this stage in the game.
Astrea realizing, okay, it's just a handful of Mutalisks. I'll get Storm to help on the ground, double upgrades, and just defend with Blink. Problem, Serral is committing to mass Mutalisk. He's going 7 more Mutas. He's saying, okay, you don't have Stargates, you're not building the hard counter, I don't need to swap off this. That being said, armor upgrade Stalkers are very good at fighting Mutas. You can technically beat them with Stalker Storm. The problem, of course, is the economic disparity. There is a 5th base on the way for Serral. His 4th is full of workers. Astrea is stuck on 3.
If I have to be critical, I would like to see Serral start up the +1 flyer upgrade when you're going to make this many Mutas. That is one of the upgrades that makes them significantly more powerful. Generally, they're used, the Mutas that is, for harassment purposes. You can always force the base race if you really need to. They're usually not really that great at fighting the Protoss army head that's on, but obviously if it's just a bunch of Zealots here. Units that can't shoot up, okay, the Prism is accepting death. If it's units that can't fight back, yeah, they can't. They can still be useful in the main engagements too. Right now, though, getting those Templar would have been real nice, but he decides to fly away.
Stalker Micro is good. Astrea's prioritizing the right things. If you're going to defend Mutalisks with ground, this is the way to do it. A mixture of armor and shield upgrades, Psy Storm High Templar spread around your bases, cannons, batteries, and of course some good Blink Stalker Micro. But Serral's Micro is so good. It's weird because I always look at the way he uses his Mutalisks and I always feel like surely he could kill a few more probes if he just goes a bit deeper. But the thing is, the Mutas just never die. He preserves them where other people sacrifice them. He's so good at bouncing around, causing a nuisance. Finally, a few Mutalisks fall. But look at that. It was all to pull him out of position and set up for this swinging move in the south. Takes out the Nexus, 20 probes. Astrea is just stuck behind in this game.
Yeah, he is a solid, well, more than 60 supply behind at this stage, and it's just so tricky. This is a relatively low-tech Zerg army, but he decides to magic box on top of all of those Archons and Templar and everything else. There's tons of Immortals, though, and they're doing a fantastic job. Stalkers also shutting down some of those Roaches, and now they're chasing down the Mutalisks. So replacing this with a whole load of Zerglings. I don't love the upgrades for him, though. The +1/+1 right now for the Mutas and for the Zerglings, they're coming, but they're really late, and this is already +2/+1 for Astrea. This is actually a moment where Astrea can potentially deal damage.
Massling pretty good against the Mortals and Stalkers. Without a warp, does he have a warp prism? He does have a warp prism on the front. Oh, maybe if he can get a few Archons in here and some Zealots. I agree with you. The problem is that his economy is getting gutted behind it. Astrea does not have a lot of money coming in. He is morphing Archons on the front line. The Mutaling, though, coming across, and the Zerglings are so good in a base trade. They are just absolutely wonderful in this scenario. Astrea might have to pull probes across this map or face fear of elimination.
Absolutely. So just like in a previous game, it's maybe worth reminding the viewers that the win condition in a game of StarCraft 2 is to destroy all of your opponent's structures, and Serral's army is really quick. All of the structures for Protoss are in the top left-hand corner. Serral is expanding all over the map. He's already moving towards the top right. He's moving towards the bottom left as well. Though the Immortals, okay, 2 of them have found this hatchery in the top right-hand corner. In the meantime, though, the Zergling Roach Muta army is destroying everything. And, well, even though I think Serral can fight Astrea's army in a head-on battle, I don't think he needs to.
Too late to recall at this point. The final Nexus goes down. I don't think we've got too much money. 790 minerals. You can build a Nexus, you can build some buildings. So it's not like it's over yet, but the army supply is so advantaged that it's going to be difficult for Astrea, even after all this base trade, to really get back in it. Serral's still got 15 drones on the map. He's run many of those away. Final building's starting to get taken out. Astrea, I believe, has restarted the pylon. There we go.
Oh, is that the final structure that he's got? Now, there's still a Templar Archives and 1 pylon out on the map. Those are inside of the main base, and that means that the only structures remaining right now for our Protoss are the ones that are in production. I think it's just the 1 pylon? Yeah, that's it. So that is the only structure that he's got. If Serral managed to dive that, okay, Nexus coming up. This is, of course, an indicator. As Serral does find a bunch of the Immortals. Serral now knows that a Nexus has been rebuilt because, well, he gets that notification in the middle of his screen as well.
The best place to rebuild sometimes is back in your own main base in these scenarios. The most secretive place is right there, whereas people are normally out to the corners, those fresh bases hiding out there on the map. No Storm here. If he had Psy Storm, I'd maybe believe. But Serral's got 54 Lings, 27 Mutas, 5 Roaches. He could win a frontal fight against this.
Yeah, the problem is that he doesn't really know that exactly, right? So he doesn't know what's inside of that prism. There is just a chance that maybe there were a few Templar warped in right before that Archives fell, because that was the final structure, I think, in the main, that he ended up shutting down. So it's a bit of a guessing game. Does Serral now decide to jump these structures? Because I'm with you, I think he can do it, but we have perfect information and we're not 100% sure.
1 more Immortal out on the map. Now, if he can try to focus that tree down and then recall that would be great. Of course, recall could only be used once every 2 minutes. That's a massive cooldown. Mutalisks are on their way to deal with it. Tree, I think, has to get cancelled. Nice.
All right, so the natural expansion of Astrea has been taken by Serral. Serral has been in full control of this game, but it's not necessarily an easy one, right? Astrea really making him fight for it. How many probes are still remaining? It's 10 in total, okay?
Yeah,
They're
it was
mining.
10 drones a second ago for Serral, but I was going to say, because Serral has 2 bases, he should be ahead, but he just lost one of those 2, didn't he? So
yeah, he's
going to have to
one.
Yeah, he's going to have to just rebuild them. He's still got a full mining base.
He was buffing that observer into surveillance mode and out of surveillance mode about 4 times. That's why I put a little smile on his face. It all comes down to these stalkers here, right? Astrea knows that he can't really move out. There's just really no way that he gets surrounded by Zerglings.
Yeah.
Serral right now is going to get vision of exactly what there is for the Protoss player. Doesn't see any Templar, doesn't see any splash damage. He can poke in. Obviously, those Mutas do have rapid regeneration, so they regen health really quickly out of combat.
27 Mutalists is a pretty impressive number. Nice blink forward, but that's going to trigger Serral to go. A decisive move for the Finn, and it's the correct move. There is not enough stuff for the Protoss to hang on. The Stalkers are getting overwhelmed, and Serral will take a dominant game 1. StarCraft's a game of small advantages that stack up over time, and sometimes players get an aura of invincibility, and people forget it's not just magic. It is details that add up to create the aura of invincibility. It's not just, oh, he magically just wins games. You know, sometimes we talk like that.
We starts with 12 drones as well, right? Just like every other Zerg.
Exactly. It's just he's figured things out to scout, adapt, adjust, and most importantly, he studies his opponents before every single series. He does it better than anyone else. We see him constantly bringing out counter build orders. And a nice quick hatchery for Serral. This was, I believe, Overlord into 14 hatchery. And yeah, it's one of these things where I was kind of talking to Serral about this build yesterday and saying how I really thought, I was like, why doesn't everyone just go 14 hatch into 15 pool? You know, like 15-15, but slightly faster. Isn't that better? And he said, well, what he doesn't like about that build is you just can't get your creep down for a while because your link speed is so late. So, you know, the Adepts are just dancing around, the Oracles start coming in. You don't get much creep out. Without a lot of creep, the Oracle Adept harass is much harder to deal with. So going for this build order, yeah, you delay a few drones there, you give up a little bit of mining. But at the end of the day, he says, you know, you can still get your link speed, you've got your hatchery on location, and that does seem to be one of the biggest priorities as well for Serral, is he wants the natural location up, doesn't want to have to defend the third base, though in the last game it didn't really cause him many problems.
No, it's one of those things where you may just also have a personal preference, right? A lot of the Zerg players are very comfortable playing with their third base as their very first expansion. We call it the third base because it's in the third base location, of course, but ultimately, it doesn't seem to matter that much at this level of StarCraft 2. Now, once again, we have a pylon as part of the wall-off. We see a chrono boost right there on the Adept. Okay, that's going to be a Stargate opener. Fair enough. Yeah, chrono on the Adept and insta warp gate research too, which is a little bit of a cheeky one. He decided to cancel the warp gate, go for the Stargate, and he will restart that warp gate research here momentarily. So small mind games here by Astrea.
Do we see a second
fall for it?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty standard, right? The maybe you don't notice this, but I don't think there's a second chrono on the Adepts. So just going to be the single Adept gets out real quick, and then the other one just kind of comes out at the normal timing. The double chrono has fallen out of fashion. And
yeah, I think it's much better if you block the natural, right?
Especially if you're going something sneaky like a Robo, right? In the last game, he didn't. I don't know. On the other hand, I feel like going across with these two Adepts is fantastic. Maybe put a probe in the wall if you really don't want him to scout what you're up to. But I think if you're going Oracle, honestly, getting it scouted is not that big a deal because Oracle Adept is such a solid opening.
Ooh, well, you were talking about that probe in the wall. There's that cheeky little Zergling coming in once again. He's going to complete the wall off like it's a Protoss versus Protoss. Make sure that there's no units sneaking into the natural. Yeah, the second chrono on the Adept is an interesting one. It's one of those minute details, just like the 14 hatch opener rather than the 15 or the 16 hatch. It's one of those things that pro gamers will spend a lot of time thinking about. Ultimately, though, Serral is just trying to get all the information, and he will see that it's an Oracle start, and well, he may even be able to catch this probe.
Not blocking the Nexus, so at least the Nexus can start there for Astrea. Does get the pylon down as well. The Zergling finally falling. Going to go first-person view of Astrea. Astrea is a methodical player. He can get a little frantic occasionally, but normally he is reasonably calm in his play. You can see the Oracle bypasses the natural. Oh my gosh. And he goes, okay, all right, it's Serral Queen defense. Get out of here. Don't want to take too much damage. Oracle already goes in the yellow without getting any drone kills.
No, hasn't even activated the pulsar beam yet, if I'm not mistaken, so now he's just sort of hanging it in the corner. There is a Stalker available, so at the very least that one will be handy when it comes to shutting down this Overlord. Ideally, though, as a Protoss player here, you want to deal at least a bunch of workers worth of damage. Just having those Oracles sit around to do nothing is not optimal.
He's going in with the Adepts and the Oracles right now. Stasis Trap on the right, Adepts shading into the third base. They're going to try and get in the choke point, but one of the Adepts does get surrounded, unfortunately. Still getting a few drones. Stasis Trap in the natural. Looks like that was deflected by Serral. This Oracle's going to come in here as well. Multiple angled Stasis harassment, and of course, it's got the Forge and the Robo behind. Now, interestingly, he warped in a second Stalker for the wall-off. That's because it's on a weird angle, this wall-off, where if you put an Adept or a Zealot, it's a smaller unit. Links can run past it unless you're perfectly placed. Stalker is a bit of a chunker, and sometimes that does come in handy for blocking those big entrances.
How many workers have been killed in this game so far, though? That's the real question. I think it's just the one probe. Okay, one probe and 3 drones. Okay, he did manage to sneak a couple of them, I think with those Adepts in that case, but the Adepts had to sacrifice themselves as well for that damage. Not loving this start here for Astrea. It's not the flying start, at least, that he's hoping for, but it's certainly not a bad situation with a very quick third Nexus, right? For the longest time, if you haven't watched a lot of StarCraft 2, for example, over the last couple of years, a third Nexus for Protoss went down at like the 5-minute mark, right? These days, it is long up and running at that point, and Astrea at 5.5 minutes is nearly fully saturated on 3 bases. So economically speaking, he's fine. It's just that his early game hasn't achieved that much.
If a modern Protoss took these builds back to 2016, they'd just be like, wow, everyone just all-ins back in the day, man.
Yeah.
Like early Legacy, there's just... And all the early Legacy players would be like, this guy's stupidly greedy, like, let's just kill him. Yeah. They're like, why isn't it working? We don't know why it's not working. He's really, really good at defending this. Well, I like the double Robo Bay follow-up, though, with the Twilight and the Forge. So Astrea's getting every piece of tech. This is, funnily enough, another strategy that's a little vulnerable to Mutalisks, but we're not going to see that this time. So far, just Roaches and Zerglings. I don't think a Baneling Nest has come in. As I say it, a Spire does go down at the front. That's a late Spire. That is not a super quick one. I think Astrea's in a much better position this game.
I love how that Spire is quote-unquote hidden, right? It's literally in the middle of nowhere, but it's one of those locations, well, maybe he's accidentally going to stumble upon it, but it's not in the spot where you would normally expect is. As we do have a bunch of drones going down to these Oracles. There's a whole lot of creep spread already, though. Okay, maybe this stays his word. Nope, it is also responded to perfectly. Astrea is going into Colossi together with the ranged upgrade for them. This is going to be Stalker Colossus Pig.
And the second Forge as well. So it's a macro play. I like it so far. I don't like this if you mass Stalkers. I think if you go up to a maximum of about maybe 18 Stalkers, preferably only 12, I think it's okay. But I think from there you want to go more like Immortals, Disruptors, Zealots, Archons, or just a really good ground-pounding army. Of course, he needs to find the spot.
Yeah.
Otherwise, those Mutalisks are going to be very annoying to deal with.
Mutas have not been, or I guess the Spire rather, has not been scouted yet. Astrea has the Observer so close by. It's one of those locations that you are so unlikely to check. But Astrea is going for an attack. Serral just committed rather to 11 Mutalisks. This is not a bad moment for Astrea to move out, Pig.
It's not. No, he's moving out. It's a pretty small army for now. But what do you got on the ground of Serral? A few Roaches, a few Zerglings, not that much. 14 Mutalisks building. That is a lot, man. Astrea just has no idea.
Yeah, he does have a Prism, of course, but a little too slow with this movement. If he would have seen the Spire, I think he would have dived a bit deeper. Mutas, will they go across the map, or is he going to just face this army head-on with everything that he's got? Is he going to snipe the Prism?
It's very unlike Serral to play Mutas 2 games in a row. I think this is really catching Astrea off guard. He finally sees it. And he's not got a lot of time to respond. He's going to try and recall the Prism. His army is going to start to pull back. Stalkers are trying to warp in to defend. Natural is under assault.
Astrea secretly crossing his fingers there, hoping that those Mutas were the very first ones that popped out. Ultimately, though, he did have a bunch of Stalkers available as well at home. We even have the Contamination upgrade, or the ability, rather, of the Overseer being used. Probably the least utilized spell in all of SC2.
You know, 7 probes for like 5-6 Mutas so far. So far, it has actually been fantastic defense by Astrea. Serral, though, does grab a few more probes on his way back out. 4th base is up, though. If Astrea can keep defending like that, he's in a good spot. But with Lings coming in, it's kind of scary. You need to have Colossus killing the Zerglings and then Stalkers fighting the Mutas. Easier said than done. Serral's still got a 30 supply advantage. He's got massive mobility. And one mistake and Astrea could find himself spiraling out of control.
The thing is, right, with this mass Muta style, those Colossi are not going to achieve too much. I don't think that Serral is really planning on engaging this army head-on. He is not, however, transitioning to, for example, mass Roach. That could have been an option here for the Zerg. Instead, he is prepared to do a full counterattack once again. And you already mentioned it, tons of Mutas have actually gone down in this game. Compared to, well, game number 1 of this particular series, Serral has lost way more of those expensive Zerg units. Natural expansion, wide open, nothing in the wall of. And these Stalkers, they've been protecting for a while, but they're going to have to blink away.
There's a lot of Lings in the top right as well. They're going to come in on the 4th because most of this army got pulled over here. Colossus are trying to head back to defend that. There's only a cannon and a battery. That are going to buy a bit of time, but so many workers going down. Stalkers are good at fighting the Mutas head-to-head, but it's the mobility that gives the Mutalisks the advantage. Look at that rotation. That is Chris taking out the battery and the cannon, and they will be able to start clearing the rest of the economy. Serral being devious in this series, playing to his strengths, his opponent's weaknesses, and realizing that Mutalisks was the best play. So, if Astrea had seen that Spire, this could be a very different game. I really feel 10, 20 seconds warning even. It's a totally different scenario. But seeing it so late and being stuck on just Mass Stalker like this, you need to be perfectly positioned. Maybe if his army was split a little better, he could have done it. But as it is, Serral is out of control. He's got so many Mutalisks. You can see as they blink forward, he turns, shoots a few volleys, and just pulls away. and he's trading very well. If we can see the units lost, you can see the Mutiverse Stalker trades, and look at that. 16 Mutalisks have gone down, but he's taken out 50+ probes, 7 Stalkers, 3 Colossus went down.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a disaster.
I think with 3 Colossi, this counterattack could actually still be pretty scary, but obviously with those Colossi down the drain, I think only 1 remains at this point in the game. Serral can actually fight this army head-on using the Zerglings that he's been reinforcing this with. Ultimately, though, he's just trying to buy as much time as possible. The finisher is already maxed out. There's only 39 workers remaining, so Astrea's best bet here is to make 1 army and win the game with it, right? Go full bulldozer, try to cross the creep and win the game with it, but it's going to be incredibly difficult.
3-2 is almost finished. If he was able to just kind of absorb the punches, not take too much damage, 3-2 would have been a brilliant kill timing for Astrea, especially if he added some Archons. Yeah, of course. Easy snipes there. Just goes floating off to the top of the ocean. There is a man in a fisher boat on top of whatever planet this is. And he is like, what the heck is going on down there? There are just giant chunks of Colossus and Stalker floating everywhere.
GG is called. The Serral obtains a very smooth 2-0